About to start.
Railings and railings.
Live? All right, welcome everybody to the first meeting of Design Review Committee. We will start by having the members sworn into office. You all have a copy of the oath of office in front of you. So if I could have you all stand up and raise your right hand and repeat after me. And just when I say I, you would say your name. I
Jennifer Dryden,
do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you. Welcome to office. Please sign your copies, and then I'll collect those and sign them as well.
There you go, ma'am.
Okay, and now if someone, maybe Esther, would lead us in the pledge of the flag?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Pledge to the flag.
Oh, stand. Put your right hand over your heart. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. At this point, we'll take public comment on items not on the agenda. Would anybody in person like to make a comment on items not on the agenda? Seeing none. Would anybody on Zoom or phone like to make comments on items not on the agenda? If so, please raise your hand or unmute yourself. To unmute on phone, it's *6. See no public comment. With that, we will go to the first item on the agenda, which is an appointment of the chair and vice chair to the committee. So if we could start with the chair, and anybody can propose and make a motion to appoint the chair.
Well, I'll make a move to move me out of the seat and appoint Patrick Kavanaugh.
I second.
Okay. Would Patrick Cowan like to accept this appointment?
I would accept, thank you.
Thank you. If everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Okay, so passes 5-0. Now, Mr. Kavanaugh is our chair of the committee. And if you would like to change seats, you can, or
Seats with me, Patrick?
or
Okay.
next time. Yes,
I will pass you the gavel.
there you
Okay.
go.
And I'll look to the city manager to guide me through the maze here, okay?
Absolutely.
I think we do have to, though, select a vice chair as well to serve in my absence or
Correct.
whatever.
Yes.
So we are open to accept nominations for vice chair.
So the role of vice chair is basically being a backup to the chair. When chair is not available, then the vice chair would carry out those duties. Would anybody like to nominate anybody for vice chair?
I would move to nominate Esther.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. Esther, would you accept that appointment?
Yes, I'll accept vice chair.
Thank you.
And
Well,
Patrick is going to be very healthy.
Would everybody in favor say aye?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. So we have a chair and a vice chair. And I have a little bit of an update, and I have discussed this with our city attorney who is with us online today, but we would like to add a discussion item on GPAC. I'll just briefly introduce. On Monday of this week, the council did approve that the city staff will establish a GPAC consisting of 2 volunteer city council members, 2 volunteer planning commission members, and 2 volunteer design review committee members, and then 9 citizens or members of the public.
And this is, for people who may not know, that's the general plan.
General Plan Advisory Committee.
Advisory
Thank
Committee,
you.
yeah, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the GPAC will be in addition to our consultant and in addition to staff. It's formed of members of this, of the elected body and its appointed committees, as well as members of the public to really be able to have robust conversations as we go through the general plan update and give it the additional look through the eyes of Solvang, as our consultants for the general plan are really the professionals who do this with different jurisdictions. They guide us through all the major milestones. They will still be there doing all of their professional work and project managing the process, as well as communications with the public. This committee will really represent Solvang and feed that Solvang view and help work with the community of Solvang to develop that vision and for the future and the goals for the city of Solvang. With that, Dave, if there's anything you would like to add procedurally, please go ahead.
Good evening, all. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. In ordinarily, we'll be going into this a little bit of background training. Ordinarily, no discussion is supposed to take place on an item not on the agenda, but you do have the ability to add an item to the agenda if the need to take action is immediate and the issue came to the attention of the committee after the agenda was posted. In this particular case, I think both findings can be made. You would need to make a 2/3 vote of your membership to add that item to the agenda, and then it would just be a regular agenda item like any other.
I move that we add it to the agenda for tonight, as per your recommendation and under those circumstances.
Is there a second?
My second.
I'll second.
Okay,
Everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Passes 5-0. Okay. So with that, we can have a little bit of discussion on the General Plan Advisory Committee. I just gave you a little bit of overview. You're welcome to ask any additional questions if you would like. But basically what we are looking for is for 2 members to be, to volunteer to be part of this committee. It will be, the entire process for General Plan Update is about 2 years. So this will be a fairly long commitment through your term, working with the city on this process. So if anybody is interested in being on this committee, you can say that you would like to volunteer. We'll see if there's some consensus. And there's no need for you to take a formal action.
Okay, I think, this is an important task for this group, and I'm pleased that our group is being represented on this. You may know that you handed out sort of the old general plan design section, and it's an important part of any city's general plan, but I think especially so here. And so, we'd welcome any nominations or volunteer to serve in one of those. We have two spaces there that the city council has asked us to identify.
I have a question as to what I mean, I understand it's a 2-year process. Is there any idea of what the time commitment is on a weekly, monthly basis? Is it once a month meetings, or is there any, expectation?
Right. So I would like to say that I don't think that I could necessarily make any promises because it will be its own committee. So in a way, it will have a role of deciding how often they think that they should be meeting. My feeling with the way that our project is structured, probably once in 2 months, if it's a robust enough discussion, will be sufficient. We're really looking for this committee not to necessarily dig into, technical aspects of review of the general plan, because that's what we hired our consultant to do, but to really represent Solvang and make sure that we address all the issues that are important to the community of Solvang as we go through this process.
And then be the points of interaction with this group, obviously.
Correct,
From
yes.
that as well, but,
If no one else is dying to volunteer, I will volunteer for sure.
Okay, so we have one interested committee member.
I would consider it as well, involvement in it. I think it's a really key thing to the future of our community. What's decided now, what the general plan is going to set the tone for the
that'd be
next
great.
2 decades.
That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Brian had expressed an interest, or?
Only until you did, and then Esther, you guys will do great. So.
Okay, so if it seems like we have a.
Does that require any action?
It does
on
not
that?
require
Okay.
any action. All we need is to ask for the volunteers.
Well, we'll let the
Thank you.
record show then that Jennifer and Esther are going to serve as the representatives on the GPAC.
Great, wonderful. Thank you both for volunteering.
You're welcome.
Great.
All right, and with that, we will move to the next item, which is approval of your regularly scheduled meetings. And I would like for you to consider, historically, the BAR and the BDC, the preceding committees, met on a second Thursday of the month at 6 o'clock. We would like to see if this committee would be willing or would consider moving the regularly scheduled meetings to the third Thursday of the month. That will eliminate having both a council meeting and a meeting of this committee on the same week. So that is one consideration. And historically, this meeting also occurs at 6 o'clock. There may be some consideration to maybe move that time a little bit earlier in the day if that's feasible, but definitely think about participation of the public as you make that decision.
Does anyone have an objection to it being at 4 o'clock on every third Thursday?
It's just a little tough for me.
Okay.
Thursdays are, but if the rest of the committee wants to do that, I'll figure it out. If it's just, one Thursday a month is.
All right.
4 is a little early.
A little early?
It's a little, I have Asia calls that start
Okay.
right at 4 o'clock.
Sure.
So 5 o'clock is
Okay.
probably, is easy. I can do 5,
Okay.
for sure.
I like 5 too.
And I like the idea of the third Thursday because it gives the city staff time to get us documentation. They're
Right.
not backed up against the city council stuff.
Right. I
so-
think it'd be great to move it to the third Thursday.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. Any objection to 5? That's
I-
1 hour and
I'm fine with 5.
Me
you
too.
okay with that?
Very good.
Yes.
Okay, let the record show that they've agreed unanimously to move the meeting schedule to the third Thursday of each month, and they'll begin at 5 PM.
Great, thank you. And with that, we will move on to Brown Act training presented by our city attorney, Dave Fleischman. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I might suggest something that the Planning Commission had asked for when I presented to the Brown Act. I know that you have a couple projects before you this evening, and while I think it's important for the public to understand the Brown Act and the Political Reform Act as a matter of oversight, they're not here primarily for that. And I in the Planning Commission, they had moved the project matters before the Brown Act training, which allowed me to have a little bit more extended time at the end to provide that training. So
I think that's, yeah.
obviously I'm up for anything that you'd like to do, but I thought I might make that recommendation.
We know why they call you counsel. That's a great idea, and absent objection or any other discussion, let's do that and move then to the first
So
proposal.
would
Is
you
that
like
the
to
next
take
thing?
an action, yeah, if
Number
you
two.
would like to move?
And we'll cover the Brown Act training then after we cover the two, number 2 and number 3.
I would suggest in that case, because we have another consultant with us on the line for number 4, to just move it all the way past
Yeah.
number 4 at the very
Okay,
end of the
so we'll
agenda.
move it to after number 4 for the Brown Act training. Any objection to that?
Nope.
Okay,
Everybody in favor? That's 5-0.
great. So the first proposal relates to the 436 First Street property, applicant Joe Hinckus. Laurie, do you have I know you have a report on this recommendation that you prepared?
Thank you very much. I'm Lori Tamura. I'm the city's contract planner, and we'll make the presentation tonight.
If you could, please, presentation on the screen. Thank you.
This property is at 436 First Street, and what we're bringing forward to you today is a proposal by the applicant to repaint the building, and the color scheme, that's simply what we're asking for. The color scheme that they're proposing is a white base with black trim, replacing the teal that you see here and the combination of white and kind of a peach that's currently there. So we wanted to bring this before you because painting of the buildings is such an important element to maintaining the style of Solvang that this is an important item to discuss here. And the concern that was raised by staff was we've had several buildings in Solvang choose the white with black trim, and particularly along Mission Drive, and some of the buildings scattered throughout. And at what point does the white and black trim become more prominent to where other colors are subordinate to it? And so we asked for some additional options, and the options we got were different colors white and different colors dark grays or blacks. So we're here today. This is their request, and so we're here tonight to hear their presentation and discuss what's the best thing to do and approve. The other point is that the building immediately across the street from that is and if we could go ahead to the next slide. These are the other elevations of the building, which would be white with black flower boxes. Go ahead. And this is a view from down the street. The wall that you see along there, it would also be white. Right now, it's more of a beige color. And then the fencing would be black. The next slide. These are the colors that were provided: black smoke, arcade white as stucco. We did get a couple of other tones of white and dark colors proposed, but it's still pretty much the same combination. Next slide. And this is what building would look like across the street, the water wheel project. This did go to the Planning Commission earlier this month, and will come before you with all of the final details in the coming months. But this is, so the white and black proposal will mirror the white and blue proposal across the street. And we just wanted to make sure that it came before this body to see if that's the direction you want to go.
anyone have any comments about this? I have some comments myself, but I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to express any issues about this. Right now, I understand there really isn't an explicit color palette that's included in the design standards, is that correct?
It has a lot of nice pictures in it, a lot of implying that there's diversity. The front statement on the design guidelines say a variety of colors and materials.
Yeah.
And so that's really the strongest wording we have in the design guidelines to encourage variety. I believe the applicant is here. Yeah.
You want to make a,
So you may want to have
yeah,
them speak.
let's, would you like to make a statement in support of that? You can both go.
Yeah.
My name's Rod Coyle.
If you would step up to the microphone.
Sorry, first time in a meeting. My name is Rod Coyle, one of the partners at 436 First Street. And just to give you guys, I know your new board, our goal is we think after we built the building, it's very ugly. It's very worn out, tired, and stuff like that. So we're not drastically, expressing that it has to be this color. We're open to fair and stuff like that. Everybody loves the Lansby. That was our goal. We think we're far enough away to look like that. That was our first proposal there, is to look like the Lansby. Thought it would classify. I think we're 3 blocks away plus down the street. We're right behind you. But as I said, we're open to changing it. There's 3 colors on the building now. And the big question I'd have that wasn't mentioned, it might not be as clear, is I don't know what you call the bands that go up. The Lansby paints that body white.
The half timbers.
What do you call them?
Yeah,
The half timbers.
Okay, yeah. So that was our initial concept, is to do that. And so I'm sure you guys have to decide if that's the direction Solvang's going or not going, allowing it. But we'd like to paint it soon before summer, like real quick. So we're flexible, we're open, like the grays, like the blacks, And I think the color choice would change if we do have to paint, the body different than the details. And we do have those nice canvas awnings that could take on another color. So as my partner Joe said in one of the things to Lori's, you can just pick the color, Lori, let's just paint it, So we're flexible. We want to do what's right for Solvang. Make the building look nice and fresh and up to date. I don't know if that helps or not.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions for me, or good?
Esther?
Well, first of all, I think it's really, it's one of the really beautiful building in
I
town.
agree.
It's got the architectural detail that's patterned after the, to Copenhagen Stock Exchange with the dragon tails there. It's a cool building that's been neglected and I'm really happy to hear that you're coming back and want to, make it look good. I think when I look at the building, what's interesting about it is the roofs are different. The style on the fronts are different, in the diagram. And maybe, I don't know, do you want to put the image of it up, the one with the front?
Can you please have
The building on the
presentation?
right in the image has the Bindisvark, the half timber, whereas the others don't. And I would love to see some more of the rich colors for which our community is known and what's patterned after the Danish colors. To bring that out, I think bringing in the black and all the railings will be an improvement. And interestingly, our packet has guidelines and rules, and one of the pictures in the packet is of the building when it was relatively new, and all the railings were black. So you're going back to the original. So I would really love to see something different, and as much as we all enjoy the Lansby, the transition of that building has been highly controversial and really doesn't fit with the guidelines as they are now in place. So that makes it a little problematic to incorporate that design, which was kind of a anomaly in a way for the Danish style buildings.
Any other comments?
I do, but I wanted to
Jennifer?
wait till what you
Yeah.
said. Actually, I think there's a lot going on, and because there's a lot going on, to me, I always like to default to more simplicity, so it doesn't look chaotic. So I guess I'm not technically averse to having it be a two-tone color palette. And I do get that the simpler it is, it's the better looking it will be. But I have to admit that when Esther, that's what I love about her being here, is that she keeps us honest about, you know, the culture and the influences. And so, having said that, I think I would press a little bit more in her querying about what are the color combinations that, you know, you're alluding to, which would lead them to a solution, because I think they're going to grapple with what those color combinations are, because there's so many choices, right? So I think if they had some kind of stronger direction, like they said, you pick the color, and they'll be happy to do it as long as we're happy. So I mean, I guess that's what my challenge is like which kinds of color combinations are you thinking, or what do you have in mind? Because I would revert to something simple that is easy to look at on the eyes and not super crazy kind of, you know, it has to be either historic or simple.
Right, and I was gearing towards the historic, and there is a lot going on, and like I said, I really admire the building. So I did bring this book. In here, there's a lot of different color palettes, and I think there's a copy of this book over in the planning department too. And
There's one in the City Hall, yeah.
even things with,
Why don't you,
like
say
it literally.
the name of the book, The Colors of Copenhagen.
I think it's British, so it's, you know, an origin, so therefore, and as I said, I know there's another copy of this on hand to kind of give you some more color guidelines, and I don't know if that's something that we could, I haven't picked out a color palette for you or anything of that nature.
Maybe we could take pictures of those pages or something to
You
give
know,
us the
I
idea. I don't know.
actually, you know, like I said, there's one at the city, and I would be willing to, you know.
I do have a copy of that,
Yeah,
yes.
do you want to look at it now, and then see if you can borrow the one from the city? So I don't know
yeah.
if that would work, but,
Do you have any?
Well, I just had a question, actually. Esther, you may know this better than anyone. Just as a rule of thumb, traditionally, the half timbers, they contrast the color of the, because that's what I think.
yes.
That would be one thing that I would say definitely, for sure, whatever, you know, whichever direction, that there is some contrast with those details and the base color of
So,
them.
yeah, we have to paint the timbers to
Yeah.
be a contrast. Totally get that, yeah.
Yeah, so
But
not white on white,
Yeah,
but, you know,
yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
color.
I think the Lansby, my understanding is it's sort of, you know, folklore now, but I think that was all painted, I think, actually contrary to what the standards were regarding that in the past. I think that was sort of an exception to the rule at the time the Lansby did that. And, you know, you can like it or not because it's simple and so forth, but it's clearly in the village. And that's where, you know, we have a commitment and actually a direction from the city council to be sure that we have, you know, test our decisions against how it helps preserve and actually enhance that Danish Northern European design elements. And color is a component of that.
Sure.
You know, and I would hope we would be able to develop a color palette that's acceptable. We can't do it tonight, we shouldn't do it tonight.
Right.
And it's unfair to expect you to
So I got to cancel
say,
my
okay, we're thinking
painter
of a
tomorrow?
color, you know, what you-
Yeah.
and so forth, that, we don't want that. But, you know, it is my hope that we're going to be able to work through this relatively quickly so we can get a color palette that's comprehensive and people will know it may not be what they would have chosen, but it is one that supports this overall intention of creating the Danish/Northern European deal, because that's what makes this town click. You know, that draws people in because they pretend they're in Denmark.
I totally,
And-
totally understand.
And white doesn't do that by itself, you know, I was showing Esther something I found earlier. This is, the red and the yellow are two colors that are there, but they're not just red and yellow, because lo and behold, about a third of them are white. This is the same street,
Right.
and I'll put those in the record or whatever. But, you know, I'm actually, I agree with the black, I agree with the simplicity comments, I think that's great. I'm okay with what you have, unless people really want to today do something different. But I think I just use it as a platform and an opportunity to express. I think on our agenda will be to get a color palette, but it has to be systematically developed, it has to
Right.
have input. And we shouldn't not have a color palette and then expect people to come in and guess what we think is acceptable.
Yeah, it's a new time, trying to
Yeah,
figure it out.
and that's all.
I get it.
So
Uh,
I'm
I
okay.
don't actually want, I'm talking to my partner, but want black and white if the timbers have to be black. I don't want it to look like the Mandarin Touch. I find that to be just too stark and, you know. So I'm thinking something, maybe a darker gray, not in the black tone, but we have gray on the building now, on the timbers, on the middle building. You might not be able to see it clearly, but that does have bands as well. I call them bands, sorry, timber. And that would be a direction, since we have to paint those, which I totally agree with you guys on keeping Solvang the village that it should be. And the railing black, the awnings possibly black, so maybe it would end up being like a three-color situation. Unfortunately, our designer, one of the partner's wives who picks colors, is out of town right now, but we do want to get it decided before the tourists get here and us have a big painting project.
Could I comment? Oh, go ahead.
No, go.
I just wanted to, you know, I've spent a lot of time looking at buildings in Solvang, as probably most of us have. And I don't need to point out the obvious. We've kind of given some examples of what things look like. But one thing I might suggest, just thinking of, is because this building looks like three different buildings, I mean, really in different architecture on either side, would be to consider even doing something different on, you know, maybe on the far right building and maybe the far left. You mentioned, you know, the really stark contrast of the half timbers. I agree. Sometimes I think that looks a little sharp or almost like colored in, coloring crayons or something. You know, maybe, I sometimes like the look of a color and maybe a different shade of that color on those timbers, if it works, obviously. So, you know, I think everybody has the interest of trying to get you guys going as quickly as possible, and unfortunately, we meet once a month, so it's difficult to do that. Probably if we had some color options to sort of, you know, look over now, but we don't. Anyway, I agree as well, though simplicity is nice. Sometimes, especially when the buildings age and the colors start to fade, things start to look a little bit shabby, you know? So, I mean, this is even kind of an example of that, right, with the turquoise. So I guess my input is just that, you know, I'm not necessarily saying I think it needs to be all bright colors, but maybe you take a section and consider doing something different, maybe something a little bit brighter, something that might age well. Just, I mean, as a building owner, I'm sure you appreciate not having to paint again in 10 years or something like that. I wouldn't personally be opposed to a little bit simpler than what some of the buildings in Solvang are, but I think it's a careful consideration, because certainly that is what we're, you know, what our theme is. So that's sort of what my thoughts are, but.
And I agree with that. And I also don't think that real stark white and black is necessarily a good look either. And we all do want you to, you know, move ahead and do your thing. Can you wait till next month when we meet and come back here with a palette to, you
Yeah,
know,
would it be
based upon
something
this?
that we take the book and pick
Yeah.
2 or 3 and
Yeah.
call it a day? Is that, what you guys think would be the best way to.
I like
Chair?
the idea, I like the idea of the tonality. I like that idea of having, in the same family, tone on tone, where the half timbers are somewhat darker to create sort of that detail without it being stripy. I mean, because honestly, the color combinations of two colors together is really tricky to get done well, right?
Yeah.
And then you talk about sun and it fading, and it just, I like that, I like that idea a lot, of that idea of making it simple and beautiful with like a darker and a lighter tone of basically the same
Same color,
family.
yeah, exactly.
I think that could be really pretty.
We're going to have a great committee. This is a great conversation. I want to say this is terrific. I'm really excited about everybody's contribution. And I think we've kind of teased out a direction to go, to really consider some of these options that have some color in them and not the black, white like you're talking about. But, as you say, we meet only once a month. An interim way to approach this, with the consent of the committee and the agreement of the staff, is for them to, over the next week or two, work on something. And if it's acceptable to you, given this conversation, I'm certainly okay with you approving it on our behalf, subject to those constraints, so they don't have to wait another month to get to go, as we approach the shank of the season.
I would say that if staff would accept that recommendation if the committee is comfortable with it. I would like, before we move in that direction, make sure that we take all of the public comment that
Sure.
you might
Okay,
also want to
very
gain.
good point. Yeah, thank you.
And we have Councilmember Infante with his hand raised. Please go ahead.
Thank you. A couple of observations really quickly. If you look at the design guide, it says that the buildings should be colorful, but they should be consistent with the surrounding area. If you stand in this middle of the street and you look at that building, to the right is a building that's white with a white picket fence. So maybe a white picket fence in the front of this building would allow a consistency from that side. If you look to the left, you'll find the knife shop there, and then down the street, those are tan with a kind of a rust-colored half timbers. So I kind of like the opinion of maybe they should look like two different buildings. And if the right building with the dark roof was painted light and used a gray half timber, and the left side of the building, it would match the building on the right. And then if the left side of the building was painted in a consistent manner with the buildings on the other side of Molly Way, there would be a harmonious mixture of colors with the consistent with the neighbors. Just an idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to make public comment on this item? Please raise your hand or unmute yourself. To unmute on phone, it's *6.
That's my guess.
I am seeing no more public comments.
Okay, is the group,
Sorry, guys.
We have those other color samples that Lisa submitted, if that's.
Those are all
It's not white, it's more of a eggshell.
yeah, but that was painting the whole body one color, though, not, we're talking timber jobs, that changes the game.
Yep.
Yeah, it changes it.
Are you comfortable waiting for a month till the next meeting, or do you need what's your opinion on waiting a month?
I mean, I love Patrick's idea because getting it done, we've waited some time already. We weren't we sent emails to the wrong parties that may not work here anymore, and, in the process, didn't get responses. So sooner the better. And it probably will take us, if we got hands on the book, we could get over there and have a look at how that fits on the building. And like I said, we're pretty simple. We want it to look nice like you guys and not go outside the box.
and we want to have a thoughtfully developed color palette. We should have a color palette for the village, for the central part, that has color in it besides white and eggshell.
Right.
And I think that's our intention, because that's consistent with the directions we've been given to maintain and enhance the the area in the Danish, Northern European style. But that's going to take a little while, I think, for us to do that intelligently. And we have a lot of great experts up here, though, which I'm not one of them. But I think that it will take us a while to do it. I don't want to rush into it to get it done in a month either. So, if the people are on this case, because it is advanced, it's our first meeting, they're obviously amenable.
I'm comfortable working, relying on staff. I think you've heard our input. I think that Councilman Infante had a very, very good comment there, that it's not just this building by itself, it's also
Right.
how it fits with the neighbors on the left and the right and in the neighborhood. So, should I move that we, Patrick, should I
Right.
move? Okay.
Sure.
I move that we give staff the authority to move forward, given the conversation we've had today.
I'll second that.
Okay, everybody in favor, say aye.
All right?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And I think it's really going to look great. You guys got a nice building.
And I point out the quotation on the cover of the design guidelines that Lori noted in her report. Variation and creativity are encouraged while achieving compliance. So we're looking at some variations. That's part of what we see in the Denmark model.
Yes.
Yeah, and guys, just one more little thing. You're probably thinking, where do we start? The book, one great place, but also a lot of the paint stores have swatch books that, yeah, so it'd be great if you're able to sort of pick swatches and match them up. Here's the base color, here's the trim color. Make it easier for,
Here's another one here.
yeah, for staff. They also have suggestions of combinations that are not stark contrasts, but nice, harmonious, one-to-one. So I don't know. I'm just trying to help. So
Perfect. Appreciate you guys doing this. Good luck.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go to the next item.
The next item we're bringing before you is the Solvang Festival Theater. We do have a couple of slides, so if we can bring up the PowerPoint. This item was brought before the City Planning Commission in February and was recommended for approval. It is a renovation particularly focused on the seating area, the staging area, and involves reestablishing or replacing the light poles. It's hard to imagine that it's over 50 years since those were installed. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done with the poles, which then deals with lighting. There's also adjustments to the sound and lighting booth. Where it sits now is going to be adjusted so it's in the center of the seating area and center of stage. So they have a better line of sight and direction for lighting and sound. It also includes redesigning the stairways that go up to the, the slides. This is the ticket booth area. And so you can see what is existing there now and the changes that they're going to be making with the ticket booth. Basically the sound equipment area is going to be moved, so it's going to be more of a standalone building, and there's some renovations there. The next slide is as you walk into the courtyard area, you can see the area where the stairwells currently merge into each other as you enter the seating area. Now that's where the sound and lighting booth is going to go, so the stairways are actually going in a different direction, and the public gets distributed just differently. Next slide. And that's what this particular slide illustrates, how the stairways come together in the old configuration, and they'll be going in different directions now, with this main centerpiece being the part where the sound and light is staged. Next slide. So the difference of the actual seating areas, the chairs themselves stay the same. They're not replacing the chairs at this time. What they're doing is making a difference with the sound wall. The sound wall currently is about 8 to 10 feet high. The sound wall will be going up about another 4 feet, and then it will have a baluff that will direct the sound into the staging area. And you can see it kind of looks like lattice work or whatever. And this additional work that they're proposing is for obviously blocking the wind, but also giving more direction to the sound and deflecting sound that's happening around in the community in the evenings, and also keeping the sound within the seating area and the stage. Go ahead, I think is, yeah. So this is just different directions of what's going to happen inside, and you can see the seating, the sound and lighting booth will be center stage, and the ticket booth will be elsewhere. The other part of this is by going through this effort and increasing the lighting technology, there'll be more directional light into the staging area rather than diffusing in the community. So I think that's the last slide. Is there one more? This is a photo of the material board that you see over here, and we wanted to get that to you ahead of time. And so today we're bringing this forward to you for comments and recognition of what has already gone on. The architect is in final stages of construction plans. So this is very timely to get your input on the details that would be part of the project. The applicant and members of the Solvang Festival Theater Board are here to provide any comments.
Thank you.
Would you like the applicant to
Sure.
make any comments? Thank you.
Thank you, Lori, for that summary. Good evening, committee. Appreciate your consideration in our renovation project. I'm Chris Nielsen. I'm chair of the Theater Fest Board of Directors. And I'm just real pleased that tonight here we have two critical people that are part of the project team. First is Monisha Adnani, who is the lead architect and principal with 196 Architects in Santa Barbara. So she's available to answer any questions you might have. And then I also want to introduce Chris Yurkidis, who is our project manager. And I know that this project has been discussed, even in this room, many times. So I won't go over that, the history or the need or the tremendous benefit that this renovation project brings, not only to the community and the town, but really to the lifestyle and quality of life that we all have and that we enjoy others coming to visit and be part of when they come here to Solvang. So with that, unless you have any general questions for me, I would like to turn it over to Monisha.
Fine, that's great, thank you.
Hi, thank you for giving us this opportunity. It's exciting to be one of the first projects that's coming to the Design Review Committee. Like Chris mentioned, this project not only benefits the committee, but it also provides structural safety for the occupants of the amphitheater, by removing those 50-year-old poles and upgrading them with poles that are current, designed to the current standards, providing light fixtures in the locations that they should be directed towards the stage. It really would benefit the structural safety of the audience as well as enhance the performance experience for the audience. So that's what we are proposing. So if you have any specific questions for the design, I can go over the details a little bit more if you want me to, or go over some of the before and afters to explain the scope a little bit more in detail. I would love to walk you through the finished boards. I know we've had a chance to chat a little bit about the finished boards, but I can walk you through detailed finishes on the finished boards as well. But I wanted to just see, I know you've had a chance to review the project, so if you want to start with the questions, we could do that, or we could just go through the slides again, whatever you prefer.
Committee, you have a preference?
I'm fine with just questions.
Yeah, I'm fine with questions as well.
I'll start with one.
Please.
There was some question about the railings, which we understand now are LED lighted, so they're to obviously light up the steps and walkways. And we were curious about the fact that there's a specific mention in the design guidelines about rounded railings, and these look to be that. The question I have is really how much of those railings are really showing on the front side of the building? Because I'm assuming most of them are on the inside, and from the images, it looks like maybe just up near the ticket booth.
And I want to highlight that a little bit more. If you could go through the 3D views, so the handrails, the railings that you're looking at are just the handrails.
Okay,
The actual railing itself is consisted of wood posts, which is very similar to what they have right now.
Right.
It's a mixture of wood posts and steel. This is only the handrail component that gets attached to the wood post, every approximately 4 feet maximum. And it's for the ramp that's on the side of this building. I know I can't move from here. Chris, do you mind? So it's for the main entry stair that's leading you from the plaza onto the seating level. And it's also for the side ramp that provides the accessibility exit from the stage left. And then it's also for the stair that's along the street. But most of the railing that you'll really see is not the handrail, because the handrail is going to be hidden by the wooden post and the steel railing in front of it, is what you're going to really focus on. The reason we selected the lighting within the handrail is because we were trying to minimize the exterior light fixtures on the exterior walls, and this was our way of achieving the exit lighting levels that we need to achieve at these 3 locations.
Well, and thank you, because, we're tasked with applying the
Right.
existing rules, and it specifically prohibits tubular steel handrails. But when that was written, first of all, there weren't LED lights and handrails, and they seem really functional.
Yeah.
And I'm not 100% clear, so it's on a wood rail, but it's still a grab bar or
Yes.
grab railing?
So I'm not sure if you can go back to the images or details of the drawings, but it's basically wood post every 4 feet. And then there's a metal railing between the wood posts that consists of a horizontal bar at the top and the bottom and vertical pickets. And this is on the inside face of it attached to the wood post.
Okay.
That's it. So what you really will see is those wood posts, decorative wood posts with a metal rail in between. This tubular steel rail, which is what they have right now. They have that tubular steel railing right now on site. So that's what we were trying to recreate. Emphasize that wooden post look, the heavy railing look that they have right now. And then
what material are the pickets in between?
it's steel, painted galvanized steel,
Okay,
galvanized. And that's what they have right now. They have the tubular pickets on site right now.
right.
And I don't think, like, for me, it wasn't because I thought that it necessarily looked bad, but
Right.
again, rather that, it says in here that we
Right.
can't do that.
Right.
So,
From the guidelines, yeah.
that said, you're still going to have some of that existing railing in place, and then this will be,
Most of that existing railing will be gone because we're changing the ramp, we're changing the exterior stair that's towards the sidewalk, we're changing the interior stair. So the only railing that'll remain is the 2 rails that lead up to the ticket booth. Those are the only railings that are gonna remain, and they are right now just tube steel painted.
Did the planning commission see the materials and the?
So they saw the rendering, they saw the concept, but they didn't see
Okay.
the actual material
so
samples.
They didn't have that level of detail? in
We
the
did
design?
have the renderings and we had the drawings that you're seeing, but they didn't look at the actual sample of the
Okay.
material itself.
Okay, good.
Yeah, but they did see the entire design concept. Concept.
So my question is, in terms of the paint and the accent colors, they are consistent with what remains to be existing, correct?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Given the context of the conversation that we just finished having,
Yeah.
I'm really curious as to what others think about this, because the one thing that actually struck me when I was looking through the images was the difference between the now and the future of the entry point. And to me, that glaring big white wall with the half timbers is just very jarring. Unless it's going to be a location for some kind of signage, like this is coming, or a banner of some kind, or some celebration that would showcase what was there. If it's just gonna be a big white wall, it's not very attractive.
Nielsen, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, because I concur, was a concern that I,
I'd be happy to.
You're talking about.
Yes,
This-
there's
the
a
second-
number of opportunities that we have with that frontage that you're referring to. And as it is illustrated right now, it's most glaring. Almost looks like it should be a big movie theater screen.
Yeah.
That's not what it's going to be. And right now, we are working with a couple different opportunities, whether the current marquees, when you walk in theater and you see the coming plays, how we're going to represent those might be utilized on that space. As I jokingly said earlier today, we're also reserving a big chunk of that for our $2 million donor for the project, as soon as we can find out who that person might be. Love to put, some notoriety there. But no, that big white space will be occupied with different signage or marquee opportunities.
I have a question about that. Just from my experience of being at the theater, is that really very visible from the street, that wall? I mean, you'd be probably having to be like on the back corner of the alley or something, to really get a visual. So my question then to the rest of the committee would be, we're sort of charged with making sure that things look good from the front, right? So,
Right.
not that we want them to look bad from the middle, but the question would be, on the subject of signage, we know that every sign that comes through has to come through some kind of an approval process. Would that be a spot that would require an approval process for signage? So I'm just mentioning that as like, how important is it, for the purpose of this conversation, whether that wall has anything on it or doesn't, or, I don't know the answer necessarily.
Understandable. It is an interior frontage.
Sure,
Right.
yeah.
You won't
Yeah.
be able to see that wall because it's perpendicular to your view, basically.
You're not from the
Right.
street, or not from the street there. I guess you might from that mole.
From the alley.
from the alley,
Fence there, I guess, but
there's a 6-foot fence though, so.
not that we want the
And
theater to look
concession
bad from
building
inside.
blocks
Oh, that's
the
right.
alley
You know.
anyway.
If I can share the railing elevation quickly so that you get a better idea of
That'd
what
be
the
great.
railing
Yeah.
looks like.
That'd be great, thank
Can
you.
I-
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm,
Sure.
Just want to make sure. So that's just what you'll see on the street view right there. If that helps a little bit clarify what that looks to be like.
If you don't mind if I step in.
yeah,
No, of
I'm
course.
gonna do that
I
after.
looked at mine today. I have,
So that you have full-size sets. So-
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Hey, they
do.
got used.
I'm gonna take a look.
So you really won't see that lit handrail
Yeah.
as much. You're really gonna focus on the wood post and the galvanized painted steel in between.
And I think that handrail is actually handsome.
Yeah,
I think
I
it's
agree.
good looking, and I like the fact that it has a downlighter in it, because it'll give a glow to the walkway, which will be nice.
I think so too, and ergonomically, I mean,
Yeah,
just
it's a nice
round-
hold, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably better for people
Because
that
it's
need
not,
to
it's
hold it.
oblong, it's not really, is it oblong, or is it
It is
round?
oblong,
Yeah,
it's
it
not
is,
really
yeah.
round. And we
Well,
really
there
did
you
look
go.
at 4 manufacturers to make sure that we are getting the bronze look that we want.
Okay,
Because they normally make those in stainless steel, so I just want to make sure that we don't end up with stainless steel railings
yeah,
there.
understood.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's an exciting project. I just think it's going to be a terrific asset to the community. And it is a great asset to the community now, and this is going to enhance it. And the opportunities for other kind of events and so forth will be there as well. Lori, maybe you can help me, because I'm looking at your charge, and you're saying the committee should review the design of the architecture and proposed colors that were approved by the planning commission. Now, again, this is the first meeting, and so these are questions we're clarifying about
Yeah.
what we do at this point. And I appreciate, Zena, you sending out the excerpt of the, or of the
Ordinance.
Yeah.
of the ordinance that,
Our job
in which our group was, established. And everybody get that or see
Yeah.
that? And it's on page 41 of that,
Thank you.
resolution or that ordinance was, it says the findings required for approval. The design review committee shall make the following findings before approving any application. And it says overall building shapes, mechanical and electrical equipment shall be well integrated into the design of the building, limited, and I guess we could see how that's done so far, but are we in a position to have positive findings on all of those factors? Is that how that's supposed to work, or can you help me on that?
Yeah, so just to step back a little bit, as we move forward, the goal is to bring projects to you in a conceptual review before the planning commission reviews the project. So that you'll have some recommendation to the planning commission or have some involvement in how this goes to a decision maker.
Right.
Then the project comes back when it's going into construction plans to see if there's been any alteration to the recommendations that have been made both by the Design Review Committee and the Planning Commission, and confirm that all of the final details have been worked out. Just as Manisha has said, some of these details we didn't have 2.5 months or a month and a half ago for the Planning Commission. But because they're going through their construction plans right now, they're getting more of those details lined up. And so just to bring that into consent, you would have had some influence on the project before it goes to the Planning Commission as a conceptual review. But because we didn't have that body in place, we went through with the Planning Commission review, and this is what they approved. And now we're asking for you to look at the details. And if you're comfortable with what they're bringing forward and it's consistent with what the Planning Commission approved, you could approve it tonight.
Okay. I do think there's minimum landscaping in the scope of this project, isn't there? I mean, there's just, you're really confined to that concrete asphalt
Correct.
area, and
That's right.
We did look at, if there was going to be any changes. Most likely, there will be some new landscaping done when, after construction, because they need a staging area. And but pretty much it's the trees and the grass courtyard area. And that's what people enjoy and have experienced. So, if there's any major changes, we'll bring a landscape plan back to the DRC to review.
okay, and your point, Jennifer had a point about the signage. Are we going to see signage then, that we apply the signage to ensure that they comply with the city's signage requirements? But that's something later, because we don't.
The applicant did not have any changes to their signing plan.
Okay.
They already have signage
And
out
if
there.
they are going to add something like a marquee,
That would be interior of the
well,
project.
that's
and-
interior to the
yeah,
project and
and-
not
Yeah,
subject, okay.
yeah, we would not
There's no
necessarily.
intention to enhance beyond what the current signage scheme
Okay.
is, using just those marquees, coming play type posters.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you then. Any other questions or comments, concerns?
Well, to go to a different subject, I wanted to have a little clarity on the heights of the light columns, I believe is what you're calling them. The current height versus the new height, because in our drawings, it looks like there's a huge difference in height, but I understand that that may not in fact be the case. Can you, inform us on that?
So the existing lighting poles all the way up to the top of the railings. Right now, the railings are not code compliant, they're not 42 inches high, but right to the top of that railing is 45 feet approximately from the stage height. Stages, we are considering stage as level 0, which is pretty much flush with the sidewalk on the side. It's at the same level. So if you're on the street, you're gonna see a lighting pole that's today about approximately 45 feet. In future, you're gonna see 52 feet 6 inches. So it's about 7 feet, 6 inches more than what they have right now. And the reason is because we had to study to make sure that we are getting the direction, the angle of lighting right for the stage itself. And then this one does have a 42-inch high railing, which has to be done by code for safety purposes.
Right, so it's around 7 feet additional.
Yes, than what we have right now.
And earlier you mentioned that the lighting, in fact, should be less impactful on the surrounding neighborhood. And is that because of the additional height and the ability to?
Yeah, because all of them are now designed to be pointing downwards, and that's what they need to do. They need to be able to point to either the stage wall or they're pointing to the stage itself.
Right.
None of those really will be pointing up. And on top of that, PCPA everybody's moved on to LED lighting than they had before. So I think lighting technology just keeps getting better and better when it comes to theatrical systems.
And
Yeah.
it's consistent in compliance with the dark sky
Yes,
limitations that we have now.
yes.
And that applies to all the fixtures, because I know there was some conversation about the fixtures that are down here on the.
Yeah.
Sconces there, yeah.
So those are located along the exterior wall of the
Fence.
building, and they're located in each bay. And each bay approximately is about 14 feet wide, and there's one fixture within that each bay. And when I say each bay is within those plaster moldings on the side. The existing one actually is not half timber, those are plaster moldings right there.
Yes.
So that's what they are. They're spaced about 12 feet approximately away from each other. And these will have frosted glass on them so that they're more like a glow rather than actually providing any lighting out of it. It's more an architectural lighting than a code compliant lighting. They don't have any uplight feature because both of them have a cap on it.
And I'm not real knowledgeable about the dark sky compliant lighting, but I think I see somebody on Zoom who is, so I will defer that question to later.
The light poles themselves are all consistent color from the ground to the top, correct?
Yes. I'm proposing gray because I
Yeah.
don't want, the theater consultant was wanting black, but I'm trying to like minimize the impact of those. So I'm proposing more a grayer color so that it kind of blends a little bit better.
Okay.
It'll blend perfect today. It was a gray sky.
Yeah, and, because when I look, from here, which kind of, if you were standing across the street, my point of view would be about.
Yes,
I'd-
from the
I'd see it about
sidewalk,
like
yeah.
that. And when I
Yes.
look at that, I see a beautiful building, but I really see, so I'm glad you're trying to minimize that look, but they do look very prominent in
Yeah.
the presentation overall of that, the
you're
building
gonna
and all
You're
that.
gonna know it's a theater.
There's no way to make them go away, but you're gonna see about 2 of them on the street side. So when you're
Yeah.
standing on the street, you're gonna see 2 of them, because the 2 that are opposite to it are in the same line as the ones that are towards the street. So in plan, if you look at it, they kind of mirror themselves on both sides. So you really will see only the 2 lighting poles from the street side, but if you're driving, 3-dimensionally, you'll be able to see all
Yeah.
6 of them.
And which color on the board are they? You said it's gray, but
Is it
I think
next to
it's
the lights
this
there?
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
oh, okay, well,
it's like gunmetal gray.
okay. Well,
Yeah,
that's nicer than what thanks.
And can we
Thank you.
put the slide up?
So to go back to these plans then, are the plans here with the view from Oak?
Oh, okay, I get
standing
you.
Here at City Hall.
Oh, that's way better than I
looking
thought.
out.
Because, I mean, they
Is
look,
this to
almost
scale,
black
these
on this.
plans?
Yes, the plans that you have are to scale.
Yeah.
SketchUp model was initially
that's
done.
great.
So the
Okay,
plan is
thanks.
definitely to scale.
Yeah.
Okay, all
And
right.
I think we submitted the demo elevations as well as new elevations so that you can see the demo versus the new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And with the illustrations that are before you, that you're looking at the materials, you don't see all the trees that are currently there
Right,
also
yeah.
that do
They're
serve
blocked.
as
They
a,
block the view.
yeah.
I have to say, I haven't ever, I have noticed the light stands and I live in the neighborhood, but given that I live in the neighborhood and I walk around there a lot, it's not something I pay a lot of attention to. I probably will now. But my point is that I'm 5'4" and I'm probably looking, out here and not as much up there. And I do really always notice the large oak trees. So I'm just,
Yeah.
some input as to.
Well, I think that cantilever is,
The pitch.
is a great feature, because I love going there, but I know that there's sound from the outside that comes in and sound from the inside that goes out, and lighting too,
Right.
and in the right weather, cold winds, and but all of those things, so you're not doming it or anything like that, of course, but I think that could make a dramatic impact in a number of those factors that affect the quality of the demonstration now. So I really like that element of this project.
That was the goal that we were trying to achieve. And the reason you see the partial trellis versus the closed space is because we were trying to minimize the height appearance of that wall as much as we could. So that's why the half of that roof is trellis, open trellis feel, and half of that is basically roofing material
Okay.
and solid appearance. And those trellis members, each of them are designed such that they reflect the sound back.
I see.
Well-
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'd like to
Okay,
go on the
sure.
record by saying that, we love Theater Fest, and it's just really great to see what's happening there. And yes, we have questions about it, but it's really, it's like the other building, it's really great to see these things happening and the improvements and how this is going to make such a difference in our community. And not to mention be a little more safe in the whole thing, which is the goal
Yeah.
that started this all, if I understand.
Yes.
So, compliments to Theater Fest, all the volunteers and all of you who make it happen and the whole design.
Well, thank you. I think before we have any, take any action or open to any action, I think there may be people that want to make comments. Is that
Correct. Would anybody in person or online like to make a comment on this item?
Yep.
Susan, you unmuted, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Susan Bott, and I'm here representing the Save Our Stars community of Blue Watch. And our concern is not just the dark sky compliance, but also light trespass, which is part of that issue. So, as Esther mentioned, the two fixtures that are pictured as sconces are actually not dark sky compliant as far as we can see, because in order to be compliant, the light source needs to be not visible from the horizontal. It should be above the screening or the shielding. So that would be something we'd hope would, there are some beautiful alternatives. Theater Fest right now has some of these lights installed that are genuinely dark sky compliant. We'd love to see all of them that way. Again, I'm glad to hear that the poles, even though they will be taller, will be downward. And since they are so high, there's obviously no way you can screen the light from the people because they're down below these lights. So I know it's a special situation, and I'm sure that they will be done the best that can be done. I was trying to think of anything else that's important. Esther, were there any other questions that we might be able to help with?
No, that actually is a really good comment, Susan, and I think I would really like to encourage, architect and design committee on Theater Fest and to work with We Watch, or to make sure that these fixtures are indeed dark sky compliant. And I think that's something that they're really good at supporting too.
I agree.
If we gave some use of flyers today that have our information on it. They have our website address and all that sort of thing. So maybe you could share that, since we can't be there in person right now. Maybe you could share that with the applicant.
Patrick, do you?
It just happened. It just
Yeah.
happened.
Okay.
Mr. Nielsen
Perfect.
just did it. Yep.
Done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments?
Would anybody else like to comment on this item? Please raise your hand or unmute yourself. Seeing no more public comment.
Well, now as I go down this list on the required findings or whatever, I'm not as intimidated as I was. I think a combination of what the Planning Commission has done and the information that we've gathered on really all of these, and bringing the board helps show the harmony of materials, color and composition, and all those sorts of things, and so forth down the line. Landscaping is kind of out of the picture here on this project, I guess. So I'm open to receive a motion regarding this, the status of this project and whether it should be approved by us at this time.
Before that happens, I guess I'm still unclear, unfortunately. I'd like, since we said we were not going to change the signage, so what will go in the blank white wall?
Right now, we don't have a specific plan.
Okay,
One reason is because there may be some donor recognition
Okay.
that we're trying to accomplish in that space. One thing for sure is that we do need to replace the current marquee structure so that we can show, the coming shows, the coming performances.
and that's on
as
the
we
other side
currently
of the
have.
building, correct?
Say again?
That's on the other side of the building, correct?
Well, the space that you're talking about is on the interior,
Yes,
yes.
okay.
So it would be that blank space you see there, and then on the sides adjacent to that,
Slide up on that one.
to that surface, there's actually space there that we might also put marquee signs as well.
And Chris, that's where they presently
That's-
are, is kind of the left and
Yeah,
right of the
not-
stair.
Exactly,
not-
very much in the same general location.
But not there.
It might be helpful to pull up the slides that have the existing on it.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
might-
Yeah, because in that current position right now is actually the landing, the top landing of the dual staircase, that then you enter the
Yeah,
theater.
no, I
Yeah,
understand. I guess
there you go.
if you were considering doing a donor location, you might consider doing a logo or some other kind of detail. That's all I'm trying to get is, what is the follow-up, what is the follow-through for that wall, so that we can be comfortable that it doesn't end up being a white wall,
I think-
and we're thinking that someday it will be something different. That's all I'm trying to get at.
Fair point. I mean, I think we can find, I do think that sign is not part of our signage
Correct. I hear that.
responsibilities. I mean, that's
Right.
because it's
I
not,
hear
it's
that.
interior to the
I
site.
just want some kind of assurance that it's not
We-
going to end up being
I think if
a
you
blank
make
white
the,
wall.
I think if we were to make this, or you want to make the motion to approve, you could make it subject to, with a provision or proviso that they provide that information as soon as it's known. Or,
Does anyone else have any thoughts about that, or?
I'm just, I guess, I think it is on.
Was on.
Yeah. I guess the theater usually starts at around 7:30, so it begins to get dark pretty quickly. I might just mention, as you said, a logo or something like that, possibly like a projection or something. And not that we have to be careful with lighting and all of that, right? But I'm wondering if, Chris, as you're saying, you've got different sponsors, maybe something you're even just trying to sort of promote. Could it be used in that way that was a less, permanent thing or something as well? It's just a suggestion or a thought. I don't know if it really pertains, but
Well, no, that's a good point, because whatever we ultimately do, it may be a very cosmetic. You'll notice on the, you just took away the diagram of the current, on the white theater wall to the left and to the right of the staircase on the Bainsbark, you'll see there's currently 4 coming attraction marquee posters. So we're going to be needing to replicate that same ability. But as you'll notice, the new entrances
Doesn't have-
occupy those spaces
Right.
where those posters are. So now that frontage gives us the opportunity to bring in that marquee of upcoming shows
Okay.
and whatnot.
So-
But how we do that
Yeah.
might be, very superficial. It's not going to be an LED, big whole electronic
Vegas.
signboard or anything. It's just going to be replicating what we currently have.
Well, and I think what's interesting and something maybe a takeaway for your group is that we haven't talked about this before.
No, of course not.
We're sitting up here, and before I came to the meeting, I had a big X there because it was a kind of a glaring, a white wall. But I feel confident that you are going to need to use that space and you're going to want to use that
Right.
space. It would be great if you came back and told us what your plans were. I don't think it's a deal breaker, but just if you would factor into it that
I like that.
this group up here is, encouraging you to make
Absolutely, and
good
that's,
use of
it is
that.
something that we're currently working on, not only from a architectural aspect, but even with, our campaign and,
Development, yeah.
and Foxworthy Llewellyn is our hero of our campaign chair, who's here tonight too, and, making sure that we're, you taking opportunity to thank the community in the right way, because, there's no tax dollars going into this project. It's all, all of us as a community that's fundraising to do this. The opportunity to use that portion there to thank the community is going to be very important as well.
Okay.
And you might-
I'm satisfied, just.
Yeah, and you might even want to put it somewhere up there, Solvang Theater Fest, because of, just clarity. It's not stated anywhere in a big way on the inside. So, just another thought item. And I guess the color, I did have a question, just kind of the overall kind of cream color. That is the existing color, and am I
Yeah.
correct in thinking that part of the reason in choosing to go with the existing color is that there's less to do and less expense by just utilizing?
The, just so that you know, the current box office, the ticket office, that tower, we're keeping that. We're going to be, that's a very important architectural feature. So we're going to be retaining that, and all the work is going to be going around the back side of it. So that current color is going to be what we're going to be matching. But even more importantly is the stage house, the big part that's not being touched in this project, that is the back side of the stage. Certainly from here on Oak Street, that's what you see is the stage house
Right.
exterior. We'll be matching that color as well, because we're, as I said, we're not touching that, and, increasing the scope of the budget and the cost is, we're doing everything we can to be very miserly with our community's money.
Well, and that's why I asked the question, because if it were a different situation, I might be recommending something that was, again, a little bit less of the stripy, not as big a contrast, but I think we all understand that
Constraint.
this is a budgetary constraint for a
Right.
really important
I
community
think that's a great
facility.
comment. I'm
Yeah.
glad you made that.
Yeah.
Great comment.
Awesome.
I would just like to mention real quick about the material you're using for the decking and for the sound walls. I don't know if everybody got to hear that earlier or not, but I actually really like it. I think, when I saw the plans, I really, in my head, it was wood. And now that I understand there's a different material, I just wanted to know a little more about that material. I mean, is that
Sure.
something like typical decking replacement, or is it used for sound, or?
It's used a lot for facades, exterior facades. It's actually made out 62% of rice husks is what
Oh.
it's made of.
Interesting.
It's got 25-year warranty. It doesn't absorb water. It doesn't let out water, so the cracking and swelling is pretty limited. And then it comes with its pre-finished. That's why we are selecting one of the standard colors, so that they don't have to come back and paint it because somebody's faded or scratched over a period of time. So the painting would also be then deferred to about 15 years. That's when they'll have to come back and touch it. It's pre-stained, pre-painted in the factory itself before it comes out.
And if I understand the part, I don't know what the right terminology is, but I kind of call it a
Acoustic
sound wall. That
Yeah.
acoustic wall there has some very interesting and functional characteristics about it. And having, spent lots of time with the concerts in that facility, I think that's going to be a big enhancement in and of itself. You're going to have a lot.
Yeah. There's a
That's
lot of
gonna help.
reflection back, so there's the absorption and reflection with the angles that the way it's laid out. So that it's not just a curved wall in the back, it actually has a 9-degree angle that reflects the sound back towards the audience.
and keeps it kind of within the space without reverberating when it's, loud music or something.
That's right. So each of these acoustical panels actually have a 3/4 inch gap in between. And you see the black mesh material that's right next to it. The black mesh material will be hiding the insulation that's behind it. So that's where the sound will get absorbed, and then the rest will be reflected back. So it's a combination, it's a balance of absorption and reflection.
Which is really interesting to me.
No, that's how it works. You don't have the DB rating of that material, do you?
No,
Okay.
no, not, it's actually the whole combination that the acoustical engineer's done the analysis
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
So it's not only the material.
And
but
it's
the-
outside, so it's hard to control.
Exactly, exactly. So it's, and so he's really going by what the dB value of the sound insulation inside is, and then the combination of the panels in front of.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great. I
Yeah.
really think it's
Yeah.
great.
Yep.
And I'm a theater lover, and I can't wait for it to be done.
Oh, thank you, Vanna.
Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're all excited to get back to a show at Theater Fest.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Absolutely.
Jennifer, did I hear a motion?
Yeah. I'd be happy to raise a motion to approve the Solvang Theater Fest renovation plans as submitted.
And the architecture and color scheme presented?
Yes, as presented.
I second that.
Okay, everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Aye?
Passes 5-0.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
indulging me.
Yeah.
It was great discussing the project with you. Very
Yes.
Thank you. Thank
It
you.
looks great, really.
Yep.
Very cool.
We're excited and got some really interesting things going on there in your
And I'll
details.
definitely look into the
Yes.
lighting.
The lighting.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
That we are compliant, absolutely.
good. Yeah, and that is, I think, city code as well, so.
Okay. You have the general, you want to orient on general planners? Or
Correct. So the next item would be a general plan update. I've asked our consultant to come to this group as there will be an important role for this committee itself in the general plan update. So I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to hear what they have said to the community in different groups so far in a brief manner, as well as help you understand what your role will be. So this general plan update is the first comprehensive, truly comprehensive general plan update for the city of Solvang. The city of Solvang incorporated in 1985, and different elements have been updated to comply with state law and the needs of the community on one at a time or a couple at a time type of basis. This general plan update is truly comprehensive, where we're looking at all of the elements together to look at all the issues, opportunities, and the vision for the city of Solvang for the next 20 years. There is, I think, an important component to it with the community and the robust conversation and really enabling this channeled way of having this conversation to develop the vision. For us as government professionals, there is also an important element so that we can plan all of the infrastructure going forward to meet that vision of the community. And as you've heard earlier today, the council has authorized us to form this general plan update committee to also create this additional structure to make sure that we are being mindful and are thoughtful of all the issues and thoughts of the community of Solvang. And for design, for this committee here, one of the important roles will be that we do have a general plan element, the design element. And that element is not required, but it has been a very important, obviously, element since for the city of Solvang. And that's that character in the TRC and everything that you look at right now in your design guidelines. That element hasn't been updated since 1987, and as much as it's has held a very important role in the city of Solvang, there's also a future for that element. And sometimes the way we wrote things in 87 is a little different than we interpret them today, so it's important to keep it nice and fresh. And one of the, as you go forward with this, one of the considerations for you will be, do you through this process, update the general plan design element, and that is your guiding document going forward, or do you maintain the two documents which we have right now, which is the design element of the plan, which is then more binding and a more flexible type of document of the what used to be known as the Board of Architecture Review Design Guidelines. So that is one of the considerations and one of the roles that would be for you to work with the consultants in the city in moving that forward. And so with that, I would like to introduce Brent and Jim from our Mintier Harnish, who are our general plan consultants.
And then, Xenia, am I able to share screen on this?
Yes, you should be.
Perfect, thank you. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So good evening, everybody, and congratulations to the new DRC members. It was great to sit back and watch your group look through the first few projects. It was like watching the first steps, so it's fantastic, and some great feedback. So my name is Brent Gibbons. I'm the project manager for the Solvang General Plan update, and along with me tonight is Jim Harnish, who is the principal and owner of Mintier Harnish. We're a planning consulting firm based out of the city of Sacramento, and we primarily update general plans across the state of California, as well as housing elements, zoning codes, specific plans, design guidelines. We were established back in 1985 and have comprehensively updated over 50 plans across the state. Who is not here tonight is Rick Rust, shown on the screen here. Rick Rust is our project director. If you attended the first community study session back in February, you might recognize him. He's sorry to not be here tonight, but will be part of this process in our next community engagement, which I'll touch on in just a bit. So I wanted to just walk through the basics of what a general plan is. If you were at our first community study session, this is a repeat, so you'll become an expert by the end of this presentation. But a general plan is a guiding document, or otherwise known as the blueprint for a community's future. The state of California requires that every jurisdiction, so every town, city, and county adopt a general plan. And the general plan is meant to represent the community's vision for the future. These documents look out 20, 30 years, so they're long-term visionary documents. This effort, as Xenia had mentioned, is the first time that Solvang is actually comprehensively updating its general plan. So over the past 30 plus years, elements have been updated individually, but not in a comprehensive, holistic approach as we're doing this go-around. And the best way to characterize a general plan is to think of it as it's laid out here in this pyramid illustration. So the general plan is the foundation. Quote, by its name, it's general, it's broad. It includes goals and policies which will guide future direction by the City Council, by the Planning Commission, and by your body here today, the Design Review Committee. From there, you have zoning regulations, which are your other regulatory provisions that guide development, subdivision maps, and then all the way up to what applicants apply for at the counter, which is your building permit. What you need to recognize here is zoning through building permits, those are all implementations of your general plan. So those build off of your general plan. So if your general plan has policies on certain style developments, that works its way up through zoning, subdivision, and then through future construction of projects. As I'd mentioned, a general plan is comprehensive. It has several elements that are required by the state, which I'll show you in a second, covering not only land use, but traffic, hazards and safety, open space, and the instance of Solvang, design. And they last between 20 to 25 years. So when we look at a general plan, we usually focus on the boundaries of the community that we're working with. So for Solvang, this is the dotted line. This is your city limits. What we also look at too is your newly approved urban growth boundary. We take that into consideration, and what we can do is we combine those into what's known as a planning area, which also includes your sphere of influence, which is outlined by LAFCO for Santa Barbara County. And this planning area, this is where we analyze the impacts of the general plan. We analyze future land uses and other portions that are part of the different elements that incorporate the future general plan for Solvang. and this is called the planning area. And the reason why we combine all of these boundaries into a larger area is that whatever happens inside Solvang has effects on property right outside its limits, and vice versa. Whatever happens right outside city limits does have effects on the community. So we need to analyze and mitigate and think about that as we plan for the future of the community. So why update the general plan? Well, it hasn't been updated in over 33 years. So this is the chance for the community and all appointed and elected bodies and officials to come together and basically make refinements to the vision for the community moving forward over the next 20 years. This is also the opportunity to make sure that the city is compliant with all new state laws. They are changing on a daily basis, it feels like. So we want to make sure that you're completely compliant and that you're also compliant with the general plan guidelines laid out by the Office of Planning and Research from the Governor's Office. As part of this effort, the City Council asked that two things get taken into consideration as part of this plan. First, we foster sustainable economic development, and we realize that Solvang is built on tourism and TOT, but also look toward other industries that can come in to help offset that. And secondary, we need to focus on a participatory community engagement program. So we come in as the consultant as technical experts, but we only know Solvang from a data-driven level. It's the community members, it's all of you on this committee who know the community on the ground. And so we rely on you to participate, provide feedback, because this isn't our plan, it's yours. So we're just here to help facilitate and guide it forward. So I had mentioned there's several required elements. These are shown here. These are laid out in the general plan guidelines, which each jurisdiction has to follow. Just because they're listed in this order doesn't mean they need to be shown in this order, and it doesn't mean that they need to be into these categories. You just have to cover each of these topics. They can be merged into different elements. They don't have to be as specified here. The one thing to point out is the City of Solvang is going to have a few additional elements that are not required, as Zenia touched on. One is the community design element, which was last updated in '87, and the second will be an economic development element. So I wanted to run you through the update process here. The project is divided into 6 phases, starting with project initiation all the way through a successful adoption, which is about 2 years out. We kicked off the project back in December of 2019, and we facilitated our first community study session on February 6th. Right now, we're actually in phase 2, which is existing conditions and trends, and this is where we start to analyze a snapshot of what Solvang is today in 2021. So right now, we're preparing an existing conditions and trends workbook that we will post to the project website, which I'll touch on in a second, which lays the foundation for where Solvang has gone and where it is now. And this allows us to then use a base starting point when analyzing the future of the community. Also, as part of this second phase, we'll have a second community workshop, and keep an eye out for that should be in April. Phase 3 gets into alternatives. This usually garners the most attention by the public, primarily because this is where we talk about future land uses. And then we get into the meat of the general plan, which is phase 4, which is preparing the policy document and environmental review with the EIR, and then the successful adoption at the end. As part of this, there's these 2 arrows. There's a community engagement arrow, which runs through the remainder of the project. And then there's a GPAC arrow here. This is new, and I was hoping Jim Harnish can touch on the importance of a GPAC through a general plan effort.
Sure, thanks, Brent. Brent's going to let me say a couple of words on this. Good evening, committee members. It's nice to be with you tonight. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the General Plan Advisory Committee as kind of an overall role in the general plan update. Some general plan updates that we work on don't have advisory committees, others do. Your committee and most general plan committees kind of represent the broad interests of the community, and intent is for the committee to provide advice to both the Planning Commission, the City Council, to staff, and to the consultants about the community's interests, expectations, and vision. the two of you committee members who were on the advisory committee also have an additional role of representing the design review committee. So you not only are representing the community as citizens, but you're representing the design review committee as well. And you would be expected to not only bring back to the whole committee the issues, the ideas, the discussion that has been at the GPAC committee, so the whole committee understands the process and the topics, but also allow your other committee members to give you some ideas to take back to the GPAC committee as the plan goes through the different stages of review and approval. You also have, your committee will have a specific responsibility to help provide feedback and direction to us and the staff that we carry forward to the commission and council about the design element of the general plan. This will be a specific responsibility you have. So you have kind of a couple of roles going on here. And so you're functioning not only as citizens in the community, but as representatives of the design review committee. And so it's an important role, and we'll be back talking with you periodically, specifically about the design review element or the design element, but also your representatives on the GPAC will be kind of providing that transition and connection to the entire general plan update.
Thank you, Jim. So just to round out the presentation for tonight, I just wanted to inform the DRC about community outreach. So this is a fundamental principle for what we're charged with as part of this general plan. So you'll notice here that there is a general plan logo, and this logo is supposed to be recognizable. So wherever you see this logo, this means that this is relating to the general plan. This will be used on all documents, all publications moving forward, and anything that has to do with outreach. So if you see this, keep an eye out. It means that this, whatever you're looking at has to do with the general plan, or whatever meeting notice has to do with it as well. There are several e-blasts through Constant Contact, which go out to a pretty diverse mailing list via email that we've compiled with the city. There's a series of newsletters. The first one is located on the general plan website, which I'll show in a second. Both are going to be, the newsletter is going to be shown in both English and in Spanish. And then a series of workshops. We had our first community study session back on February 6th, and we're going to have our first formal community workshop early April. And then lastly, we have our project website, and this is the clearinghouse for everything that has to do with the Solvang general plan. So all documents that are out for public review, all public comments that are submitted online, and all the meeting notifications are going to be shown here. The website is plansolvang.com. So if you go there, you'll be able to learn more about the general plan process, how it works for Solvang, next steps, and then review any documentation or hear about any meetings. On this homepage, on the far right side, there is a comment box that you can click on, and you can submit a comment at any hour of the day. Any comments submitted go straight to my email, Rick's email, and the city's email. So we do read them, we do get them. And if you're interested and have not already done so, there's a sign up button there as well. And you can click on that, put in your email, and that'll sign you up for the e-blast that come through regularly. And then lastly, Jim and Xenia had touched on this. So the incorporation of the DRC. So what's your role? So as a committee, you'll be reviewing the community design element in phase 4, which is the policy document portion of the project. So as this committee, you'll review input and provide appropriate direction for the application of architectural and community design principles for the entire community of Solvang, including the central core, which has the Danish architecture and architectural style application. What you'll do in the end after reviewing this, you will provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission, which will then make a recommendation to City Council for approval. So you are going to be the first acting body to review this and make a formal recommendation as it moves up the chain of hearings through the process. So that is the end of my presentation. I appreciate you all sticking through this. Xenia, I will hand it back over to you and the DRC to facilitate if there are any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Brent and Jim. If the committee has any questions, this is your chance to ask our consultants.
You've done a lot of these projects up and down the state of California, I gather. What is it about Solvang that makes it particularly distinctive compared to those others?
Particularly distinctive? Well, I would say for me, I prefer to work with smaller communities. I think that there's a better representation. There's better opportunity for feedback. I think change is accepted through the community because it's community driven. And I think for Solvang, it's unique. I mean, Solvang is not your typical community. Being the Danish capital of the world, you are definitely a hotspot for tourism. You're recognizable, you're unique. Most communities cannot replicate and don't try to replicate what Solvang does. So I think that's what, at least when our team saw this project come forward, we were very excited to bid on this. And personally, I have spent a number of vacations in your community with my family. So a whole host of things. But I definitely think working in lots of different size jurisdictions across the state, I definitely prefer the smaller communities. There's more one-on-one attention. And I think you can get a really good product and result.
Great.
Yeah, I would just add, there are few communities we work in that have such a distinct personality, distinct characteristics, distinct attraction. So, and you know that already. I mean, it's a really special community, well known throughout the country. So, as we've already been charged with, we will help you develop a plan that capitalizes on that the unique qualities that Solvang has. And I should add that it's been years since my wife has asked to go to a community that I'm working in, and she's been bugging me to come along to the next workshop. So that says a lot for Solvang as well.
Great, good to hear. And we are going to have two members of this committee join the steering committee, and they'll be terrific contributors to that effort. Any questions or comments? Okay, I don't think there's anything more. We appreciate the update of the general plan, and look forward to working with you, and look forward to the party when this is all over.
Yeah, definitely. Look forward to it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
This leaves us with the last item that you moved, which is to receive the Brown Act training for the
Right.
committee. And Dave, please take over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've gone ahead and started sharing my screen. I hope you can all see that.
We can.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate your taking the time this evening to listen to this presentation. I think some of you who are new to local government.
Hold on just a second.
Were there planning staff comments?
It's on the agenda.
Or it said,
If there is any comments, Laura.
Yeah, I think the only comment that I had was, we do have items already scheduled for the next meeting, so that you'll get materials on it. We will bring forward the water wheel project, which is across the street from the one that we just discussed. There is a sign plan that is very interesting. First tenant going into the PAR building is coming forward, so we will have that for you. And there, depending on the materials that we get, we may talk about directional signs throughout the city based on what's happened with Copenhagen closing and with COVID. There's some requests for directional signs. And so those are the items that we have so far. Last year, there was about 4 projects approved by the Planning Commission. And because we didn't have a BAR, DRC, there are conditions of approval for them to come to your group when they come forward. Nothing has been submitted for final plans yet, but throughout the year, we'll be seeing those projects come forward.
Okay.
And we do have one other project that we will be bringing forward, and we still need to coordinate this, but the Mission Drive apartment project is in the queue. So in the near future, you'll be seeing that.
Mission Drive, be specific, which apartment com? The skit? Not
It's
the,
the
Old
St. George
it's
project.
the old lumber yard?
Without the,
Okay.
without the
Yes.
hotel.
All right.
So those are the projects we're working on right now, and you'll I'll keep you posted.
And just because I'm a little out of the loop with that, so it's been decided it is going to be apartments, or?
No, and I would avoid probably talking too
Yeah,
much about
yeah.
it. We'll bring
We
it
just-
forth, but there is a project that's submitted to the city, and
Oh, okay,
it's going through the process, and it's for housing development.
gotcha.
Thanks, Lori, because it really helps me at least to be able to kind of like check out the site and kind of mull it around, and having a little advance notice is really helpful.
Okay.
So
Great.
even if it's not next month, it'll come up. So
It's a month and a week. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, there you go.
And by the way, those materials will be available like here at City Hall or when they're like a week in advance or something?
Yes, we will submit it to you. A week in advance would be reasonable, any
post on
future agendas.
Okay, great. Thank
That's
you very much, Laura. Appreciate
Yeah.
your help tonight.
Thank you.
really helps us to be prepared. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, Dave, back to you.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm Dave Fleischman. I'm as of Monday night, the city attorney, no longer interim. The council went ahead and approved our contract. But prior to that, for about the last close to 21 years, with the exception of about a 19-month period, my office was also city attorney. So I have a long history with Solvang and a deep love for the community. So I share your passion for the uniqueness of the town. And hopefully, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to reach out here. But some of this information is a little bit thick. I will be going through it very quickly. My firm does provide a couple manuals on this type of information on the Brown Act and the Political Reform Act that goes into much greater detail than what I'll be going through tonight. So I can provide those to you offline if you'd like. But in any event, what I'm going to be covering tonight are a couple of issues. I'm going to be covering the Brown Act, and I'm going to be covering the Political Reform Act and conflicts of interest. So we'll start off with a little bit of background. What's involved in being a public official? You are public officials by your volunteering and being a member of the DRC. You're now a public official. So your interests in being a public official are part of being effective governance of Solvang. You want to have good policy decisions, good policy recommendations to the council. You also want to make sure that the public has confidence in what you're doing and the recommendations and decisions that you're making. You obviously want to avoid criminal and civil penalties. That's probably not your primary reason for doing the right thing. Doing the right thing has its own merit, but there are some criminal and civil penalties that I'll be discussing. And then you want to make sure that you avoid setting aside any of the decisions that you make. So I'll go into that a little bit more towards the end of the presentation. So the essential points that I'm going to get into are serial meetings and the 500-foot rule. And you'll notice that I have "ish" in quotes. I'll explain that when we get to the Political Reform Act. So backing up to the Brown Act is California's open meeting law, and it's based on two basic concepts: that the people's business should be conducted openly and that several minds are better than one. And this is the preamble to the Brown Act. So if you read through this, I won't read it to you, but essentially the construct is that the people create the bodies of government, and they don't, by creating those bodies of government, give up the ability to supervise them and understand what is being done on their behalf. So the Brown Act is created to allow the public to have that oversight role and to participate in the government. So what entities are subject to the Brown Act? Well, the City Council and Planning Commission, the DRC, obviously. There are some private corporations that are publicly created or funded. I've represented one or two private corporations over the years that have voluntarily subjected themselves to the Brown Act. The SCVB, in its bylaws, actually has a requirement that they comply with the Brown Act. And then the successful candidates and nominees to one of the above. So when a city council member is elected to the council, they're covered by the Brown Act even before they're actually sworn in. What are the purposes of the Brown Act? Well, I mentioned that a little bit in connection with the preamble, but it's public access to the decision-making process, oversight function, and the legitimate privacy concerns of public agencies, which I'll get into a little bit. Those won't apply to the DRC, but it's good to know what they are, just so you'll have an understanding of the exceptions to the Brown Act's general rule of open meetings. So is it a meeting? That's the question that you ask. So these 3 points are how you determine whether or not it's a meeting. It's where you have a majority of the members of the body present at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate on an item of discussion with the subject matter jurisdiction of the body. So if you take a gathering of the 5 members of the DRC, you obviously have a majority of the members present. But then you ask, are they present at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate? During COVID times, we've had to ask some of those questions a little bit differently because some agencies are meeting entirely electronically, and the Brown Act has had to been modified a little bit because nobody's in the same place in those situations. But the last one is the most important one. So if it's an item of discussion within the subject matter jurisdiction of your body and you have the majority present, then you could have a Brown Act meeting. But if there are 5 of you or a majority of you getting together to discuss something that is not within your subject matter jurisdiction, I use the example of March Madness since we're in the middle of March, what teams will be among the 64. That's not something that will come to the DRC ever. So you're free to have all 5 of you get together and discuss that type of thing. The serial meeting is the concept that I want to spend a little bit of time on. A serial meeting is where you have consecutive or serial communications, even though you may not have the quorum of the DRC present in the same time, place. But when you take it as a whole, through the majority of the board members are directly or indirectly communicating, either by in person, individuals, email, other electronic means, to develop a collective concurrence or a consensus on action to be taken. So the way I tried to diagram this out, you have 2 types. You've got the hub and spoke approach and then the daisy chain. The daisy chain is easy to understand. It's when DRC member 1 speaks to DRC member 2 and number 2 speaks to number 3. If you're discussing a matter that's within your subject matter jurisdiction, now you've had a serial meeting. Even though the 3 of you have not been in the same place at the same time to discuss that, you've had a serial meeting. Same thing with the hub and spoke approach. The hub is typically someone who is not part of your body, who is conveying or ferrying information to each of you, who are the spokes on the wheel. And remember, that will come up typically in a situation with a developer where a developer will speak to each of you, or a member of the public will speak to each of you about something and convey information back and forth among the various members. Keep in mind that the person who's at the center of that circle, the person who's at the hub, is not covered by the Brown Act. They don't get in trouble. Now, you're allowed to have individual contacts. You can talk with individual members of the public, but you just should keep in mind that if that person is conveying whatever you're talking with them about to another member of your board, you may have a Brown Act problem brewing. So I used that little diagram before, talk about the serial meeting. 1 speaks to 2 and then 2 speaks to 3. That's where you have the potential problem. So just keep that in mind. So social media is the big one where we've seen a lot of changes of late with respect to elected officials. And I have had this slide in since about 2015. The legislature didn't get around to doing anything on this until last year, and I'll go into that in just a minute. But you see the 2 tweets down below. Those are from Rex Richardson, who is a council member in the city of Long Beach, and he is tagging other council members in that tweet, talking about what they should name a new library in town. And he's asking for what their thoughts are. So he is actually soliciting a conversation on social media about whether or not to rename a city library. That's something within their subject matter jurisdiction. And I've always pointed out that Councilmember Richardson was running a risk by doing it this way. So the legislature, I'm sorry? Oh, I thought I heard a question. So the legislature went ahead and took care of this problem to a certain extent with AB 992, which went into effect January 1st of 2021. And just to let you know, I was involved in the drafting of AB 992, so I have a little bit of background on how it got to where it is. It did not get to where all the city attorneys thought it would go or wanted it to go, but there are some limitations that you should be aware of. So it's permissible for you as DRC members to engage in separate conversations on an internet-based social media platform to answer questions, provide info to the public, or solicit information from the public. But a majority of you should not use that social media platform to discuss items of a specific nature. Now, you notice I put in parentheses, including likes and emojis. That is considered communication. That is considered discussion on a social media platform. So if one of you posts something and says, I don't like the color palette that this particular project is proposing to use, and two of you put a thumbs up or a like or an emoji, now you've had a Brown Act problem because AB 992 prohibits that. So just keep that in mind if you're active on social media. It is a growing problem, and elected officials and appointed officials are using social media like at no prior time in my career. It seems to be the direct democracy approach to communicating with constituents. Now, this is the interesting thing that AB 992 put into effect. If you see that third paragraph, that a member of the legislative body shall not respond directly to any communication by any other member of the legislative body. So what I told you before is a serial meeting is when you have a majority of the DRC communicating. AB 992 takes that down to a one-on-one conversation over social media. So if someone from the DRC posts something, you really should not respond to it, directly to it. You can put your own post individually, but you should not be responding to posts made by other members of the DRC. Now, one thing I did want to point out, since this was the part that I contributed to the drafting of AB 992, is this internet-based social media platform is easy to conceptualize. It's not always easy to define. So we all assume Facebook, Twitter, those are social media platforms, but you're probably aware that Facebook has the ability to have private chat groups and private groups that have to be, you have to have someone approve your membership to them. Under AB 992, those are not considered internet-based social media platforms. And Nextdoor is another example. You cannot just join Nextdoor and be involved in every neighborhood that you want to join. You actually have to be a member of the neighborhood. So those are outside the definitions of AB 992, and then you just default back to the regular Brown Act concerns that you don't have conversations, even in those walled gardens of private chat groups where the business is something that comes before your body. So an ounce of prevention that I'll offer you is avoid discussing your DRC business with more than one other board member outside a public meeting, and avoid soliciting or communicating the views of other board members outside a public meeting. So what's not subject to the Brown Act? Well, I mentioned the individual contacts unless you have a serial meeting. You can go to conferences like the League of California Cities will put on conferences for planners and city council members and appointed commissioners. Those are perfectly acceptable for the majority or all of you to attend. The qualifier, and this will be the qualifier for the rest of these, is that you not discuss amongst yourself items within your subject matter jurisdiction, except as part of the public portion of those conferences. Same for community meetings, like Neighborhood Watch is a good example. All 5 of you can attend those. You just have to make sure you're not discussing items of DRC jurisdiction except as part of the meeting. You can go to a meeting of the City Council, of the Planning Commission. Councilmember Infante has been attending this particular meeting. That's perfectly acceptable. All 5 of you can do that with the same qualifier, that you not discuss amongst yourself items that might come before the DRC. And then you have social and ceremonial events. Meeting agendas, this is something that staff typically will take care of, but you have to have the time, place, and a brief general description of the items to be discussed. You don't have to put the items action requirements on the agenda, just what the general description will be. And then there's different agenda timing requirements for different kinds of meetings. For regular meetings, it's 72 hours. Special meetings, it's 24 hours. It has to be posted in an accessible location. And the important point is no action or discussion on a subject or item not described in the agenda, with very limited exceptions. In your first meeting as the DRC, you got to do that very limited exception. You got to add something that was not on the agenda originally, and we walked through how to do that. So you're all professionals at it now. Any materials that are provided to the committee within the 72 hours before the meeting have to be made available to the public at the same time and posted on the website. Public participation, members of the public must be given an opportunity to address a body on any item within the subject matter jurisdiction. We call that public comment, and the public has a right to come and speak on anything at the beginning of the meeting that they wish to that is within your subject matter jurisdiction. For special meetings, you can limit it to the items that are on the agenda. This next slide and series, I put it in here so that you get an idea of what public comment can look like. Fortunately, Solvang has not had a whole lot of this kind of public participation, and certainly the DRC is probably not going to get this, but this will give you an idea of how far the Brown Act goes and what people are allowed to do. So I'll go ahead and turn this on, and I hope my sound is going to work on this. So here we go.
We will get help from above, and with the flying saucers, they do above.
On the East Coast, they have slaves, and they believe in slavery and made in China. But on the West Coast, the new West Coast, we don't believe in that. We believe in the union, and that's what we are.
But listen, honey, I know that you've got Pilates going on, but I've got to go to my traffic commission meeting, okay? Would you get out of the road, buddy? Oh, it's some bicyclists in the middle of the road. I don't know what they're doing there. It's just driving me crazy. What do you mean it's the law? How do you know? Okay, you work for Caltrans, fine.
Because in the Bush administration, which is really good, he has government funding for small business owners. I'm just tired of being a second-class citizen and being relegated to a ghetto.
Now, if I had to sit there, I would be ashamed of having this planning department, which I would call a Gestapo or a KGB wannabe. You know, I would fire these guys.
So anyway, that's what you may be subject to receiving on public comment. Hopefully not, but those are a collection that I've maintained over the years from other cities. And at some point, someone will come to you like that. If you get to that point, we can obviously have a discussion of how to deal with situations like that, but hopefully you won't have that kind of public comment coming forward. I won't spend much time on closed sessions. Those are applicable to the city council. But if there's not a specific closed session type, the session's got to be open to the public. The types that the council may have are for labor negotiations, for real estate negotiations, performance evaluations of employees, and things where the city council may be subject to litigation where they want to speak with the city attorney about the opportunities and detriments of litigation. So what are the remedies of the Brown Act violations? You can have criminal ones. It's a misdemeanor. Those don't typically get prosecuted. I haven't seen a criminal prosecution of the Brown Act in Santa Barbara or San Luis Obispo County in many, many years. They do happen, but they're fairly rare. It's more likely that you'll have a civil violation where the district attorney or another interested party will file a lawsuit to invalidate the action. And they get their attorney's fees if they're successful. So it's better to avoid getting into that. So before I get into conflicts of interest, I'll ask if anyone's got any questions regarding the Brown Act that I can answer at this point.
I have one. I can't see any reason why I would want to be posting to social media about any of the subjects, but I guess if I did, I just want to make it clear. So if I have something, let's say I receive a packet the week prior to the meeting, and it's about Theater Fest, legally I can post about that and ask for public comment, or as long as members of the committee aren't interacting with me?
That's correct. You can post on social media, on that internet-based social media, and you ask for information or provide information. But it tends to be, I would say, a temptation for other members of the board, if they are friends with you on social media, to chime in or even hit a like button if you say something. And it's just better to avoid that kind of situation. But if you can get the information that you're looking for from the constituents, it's perfectly permissible to do that kind of one-way communication, because that's the same as walking down the street on Mission Drive and asking people that you see, hey, what do you think of this particular thing?
Sure.
That's kind of what it's like.
So it's not something that needs to be kept confidential, I guess, is the crux of it.
No, that's correct. And I'll get into a little bit more about, if you get packets from someone on a matter that might come to you, that'll come in the conflicts of interest a little bit at the end. But are there any other questions at this point? Okay, I don't hear anyone, so I'll go ahead and move into the conflicts of interest. So conflicts of interest, the laws, the Political Reform Act, you have common law rules, which is bias or prejudice, which I'll get into a little bit more, and then Government Code Section 1090. Essentially, the purpose of these laws are to make sure that the decisions that you make are based only on what best serves the public's interest and not your own personal interest. So you're removing bias and prejudice, and it contributes to the public's perception that the process that you're engaging in is fair and legitimate. And that's part of that effective governance that I mentioned at the very beginning with respect to the Brown Act. It also bleeds over into the Political Reform Act. An important thing that you should remember about conflicts is if one of you has a conflict of interest, you haven't done anything wrong. You're just not supposed to vote or participate in the decision that's before you. In a town the size of Solvang, it is almost inevitable that one of you will have a conflict of interest at some point and you'll have to step down, but there's nothing wrong with that. And so don't worry too much about it if you do have to step down. The Political Reform Act, this is just a very summary of what the requirement is, but it prohibits public officials from making, participating in, or influencing a decision in which they have a material financial interest. The making of a decision is easy. You can step down. Participating, you can step down. Influencing can be a little bit more difficult. If you step down, you step out of the room, but you're sending tweets or you're sending messages by your cell phone to other members of the board while you're out of the room, you're influencing a decision even if you're not actually participating in the room. So keep that in mind, that you don't actually have to be in the same room to influence the decision. So these are some general reminders. I'm getting some feedback. I'm sorry, I'll turn down my microphone a little bit here. The Form 700s, I'm not sure whether or not any of you have received the Form 700, but typically city council members, people in my position, city manager, have to file a Form 700 that sets forth our financial interests so that the public can determine whether or not there is a conflict of interest in anything that we do. And I won't spend too much time on that, but if you have an obligation to file that, you really should do so, because the failure to file can invalidate the action that you take. I won't spend any more time on the FPPC form. Now, you do have an obligation under AB 1234 to do some training, which is ethics training. What I'm giving you tonight is not that ethics training. It's a specialized form of training. And then you'll have sexual harassment prevention training as well. Those certificates of completion should be filed with the city clerk's office. And the FPPC, the Fair Political Practices Commission, is the enforcement agency for violations of the Political Reform Act. And they have an enforcement guide that they put out every quarter that sets forth what the violations were and how much the fines were that were imposed. And if you take a look at the heat map, Santa Barbara County, fortunately, is fairly free from enforcement cases. Some of our neighboring counties are a little bit more subject to it, but it's more of a function of how many people and how many elected and appointed officials are in those areas. But the FPPC does put out this enforcement quarterly, and you can see some of those fines are not small. Some of them are fairly nominal, but you should keep in mind that the FPPC does actively provide enforcement efforts in a whole range of issues related to the Political Reform Act. So how do you know if you have a conflict? This is the practical test. Is it reasonably foreseeable that your decision will have a material financial effect on you that's different from the public? So what the FPPC does is they do a four-step analysis. Will the decision result in reasonably foreseeable financial effects? If it's yes, are those effects material? If they're reasonably foreseeable, are they the same as the public would suffer or experience? And if they're not the same, will you be making, participating, or using your position to influence? If you answer all of those in the affirmative, then you need to step down. That's the pure conflict. Now, the 500-foot rule, that was one of the two items that I wanted you to remember, and I'll get to the ish in a minute. If the proposed action or decision involves a location or a project that is within 500 feet of real property that you have an interest in, the law presumes that you have a material financial impact from your decision, and you should disqualify yourself. It's possible to avoid that presumption, but it's very difficult to do. You have to go and hire a financial expert who would provide all sorts of financial data about how your decision would not have that impact. And it's easier in that situation to step down. So here's the ish part. even if your property is outside that 500-foot radius, you need to consider whether or not your decision would cause a reasonably prudent person to believe that your decision was such a nature that it would influence the market value of your property. So if you're within 750 feet of a project site, give me a call. Let's talk it through. We'll try to figure it out and see if you should step down on it. The bullet point I put down there below is a new feature that we got a year or two ago, that homeowners association common areas are no longer implicated in that 500-foot rule. They used to be, which was a problem for cities that had a lot of homeowners associations where the council members or board members were part of that HOA. So this is what you do if you have a conflict. You state that you have a conflict, and if it's not a closed session, which it won't be for the DRC, you identify the details of what the conflict is, whether it's real property, source of income, you have a business involved, and so on. The consequences, it can have your decision rescinded, and you can get up to a $5,000 fine from the FPPC. And that's what a $5,000 bill looks like. You probably don't get to see those very often. I thought that was a nice touch there. They're out of circulation, so probably won't see one, but it's a lot of money. What should you do if you have conflict questions? You can actually get informal advice from the FPPC. They have a toll-free line that you can give a call. They'll also do their advice by email. Informal is good for a gut check if you're not sure whether you should vote or not. But I generally advise board members and council members that if they feel they might have a conflict, they should get formal advice. Formal advice takes about 21 days to get from FPPC, so you need to do it in advance. And it's the only thing that insulates you against prosecution by the FPPC. I can't provide that insulation, so you can get general advice from me regarding conflicts, but I can't provide that insulation. So what I tend to do in situations where it's a close call is I help write the letter to the FPPC for the board member or council member to receive formal advice. And in those situations, since I've written a lot of those letters and I'm more familiar with the regulations, I can frame the question in a way that it will get a favorable response from the FPPC. You can also get advice from your own lawyer. In Solvang's very, very distant past, there was a council member, I seem to recall, who hired his own attorney to provide conflict analysis, and he spent tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees on that, got advice that he could vote, and went ahead and voted, and FPPC said, nope, you're wrong, and imposed fines on the council members. So you can get that advice. It has about the same effect as general advice from the city attorney in terms of insulation. So it's always good to get that formal advice from the FPPC. Some other conflicts issues. The common law conflict, this is the due process or the fairness that we talk about. Since you'll be rendering decisions based on, you're kind of like judges. So you're taking evidence or taking information and you're making a decision based on rules that the city council has set through the municipal code. And so you should remain fair in those kinds of decisions. You should remove any personal interest that you might have. If your brother is bringing a project forward and you have barbecues with your brother every weekend, you might not want to sit on that matter, even though your brother may not be a source of income to you, may not otherwise be a political reform act conflict for you. It's just a perception and the reality of being fair in your decision making. Government Code Section 1090, I won't say much about that, but it just basically prohibits you from making a contract where you or a member of your family would have an interest in a contract with the city. That doesn't come up very often, but I have seen it happen over the years. Section 1090 prosecutions are fairly common, unfortunately. It's a very arcane area of the law, and even people who have been practicing it a long time are not entirely sure in some situations whether it applies. So it's better to just avoid that type of situation, or at least seek counsel if you do have questions. And finally, this AB 1234, I mentioned it before, you've got to have local officials who receive compensation, stipends, or expense reimbursements. You have to have this training in public service ethics laws. I'm not giving you that training, but I can certainly point you in the direction of how to do that. So that's all I have for you this evening. Again, I'll open it up to questions for any of the Political Reform Act or conflicts of interest issues.
Any questions?
My question was around the ethics training. Since I work for a financial entity where I do ethics training, does that apply or do I have to do it separately?
You have to do it separately. It has to be specific to AB 1234, and you have to actually have a certified AB 1234 trainer do it.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different type of ethics. It's more ethics in the public context than generalized business ethics.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question, but it goes back to the first part, when you were talking about Spoken Hub.
Yes.
You know, that was the one part where I thought could potentially be a problem. I don't believe it has been, because there's a central figure that we may not know is speaking to, you know, multiple members here. How do we avoid that, or how are, you know, I'm not quite sure how to avoid that, let's put it that way, or know
Well,
what's happening.
Yeah, the first thing you do is you say, have you spoken to anyone else on the board? And they may tell you the truth, they may not. But that is the first question that you should ask if they come and talk to you about something. And if they say, yes, I've spoken with one other member, you are safe in that situation if they're telling you the truth and they're not going to go talk to a third member. But in that situation, I generally recommend that you say, well, why is it that you want to speak to me individually? Is there something you want to tell me that you're not comfortable telling the public during a public meeting? If that's the case, I really don't want to hear it right now because I would have concerns. But that does happen in the development context, where a developer will say, oh, I want to show you some aspects of my project that I think you'll really like. And they're basically trying to curry favor with you, but they may not bring that forward at the meeting. They're just bringing it forward to try to get you onto their side. And they may do that with all 5 members. You just don't know that that's the case. So if you do get approached in that situation, just let them know that, okay, I will listen to what you have to say, but I'm going to go back to my board in the public meeting where we're considering this, and I'm going to disclose that we had this conversation. And I'm going to give them a summary, as best I can remember it, of what we talked about. Are you okay with those qualifications to our conversation? And if they say yes, then you do just that. You bring it back and you let everyone know at the beginning of the project consideration, hey, we had this meeting, this is what I learned, this is what the person told me. And that way you're all working from the same set of facts.
Thank you, that was very helpful.
Very good. Other questions? Yeah, so we do have our 700 forms. City managers provided those to us tonight. And the ethics training has to be completed within the first year of your swearing in. Is that what I heard?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
And I will be sending you
Information
sign-ups
regarding
and, yeah, I will sign you up for it, basically. We'll
For the
just give you-
online training?
Correct.
Okay.
Same with the sexual harassment.
Correct.
Okay. Great. Great job. You've done this before, I can tell, but it's, yeah, you're.
I hope I didn't go too fast. I tend to ramble on that, but this is the 3rd time I've given it in the last month, so it is a rhythm that I've gotten into.
Yeah.
But I will again reiterate the offer that if you are interested in it and you want to learn more, my firm puts out some very detailed guides on both the Brown Act and the Political Reform Act. They're good resources if you have initial questions, but I'm always available. You can reach me immediately if you need to, leave a message if you can't get me, and I'll return your call as quickly as I can. That's what I'm there for. You may not see my face very often. I could go into reasons why that's the case. I have to remain neutral for the city council so I can advise them. So if one of your decisions gets appealed to the council, I have to be able to represent the council on that.
Yeah.
So you may see another lawyer from my firm representing you and providing advice to you as you go forward. But for the Brown Act, I wanted to introduce myself, obviously, get to know you all, and establish that relationship. So good luck with the DRC. I'm excited about the new concept for it, and you've got some important work ahead of you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your comments,
All right.
and we're glad you're back on board.
Thanks
And
very much.
if we wanted to get in contact with you, is that something, Zena, that you could share contact information with us and potentially the other materials that you've offered?
Yes, I could put you in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. That was really good.
Yeah.
Board member comments.
I just had one thing, I mentioned it to Xenia, that not for us to be conducting business in an improper way, but to have contact information for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Just so we know emails.
I
and
do
stuff.
have it prepared. I wanted to get you through the Brown Act training before I send it out,
okay.
so
Yeah.
I will send it out to all of you.
Okay, thanks.
I have a comment. I'm assuming we'll get to know each other's philosophies and sort of probably a lot about each other over the coming years. But one thing that inspired me to want to be a part of this committee was, well, I'm a business owner in a few different ways here in Solvang and a homeowner. And, one of the things I have felt has been difficult to navigate in the process has been the issue of consistency. And a lot of times, or consistency with sort of the decisions being made, from one project to the next. But the second thing is enforcement, and of course, we don't really have a lot about enforcement, but consistent enforcement. And I feel like these guidelines are in place. As a business owner, I have no problem following guidelines. It's difficult when I then see that other people are allowed not to follow the guidelines. So for me, it's important to have a consistency and to inspire, I guess, the rest of the city staff and everything to find a way to enforce that. I'm excited about the prospect of the new general plan and potentially new design guidelines that might be a little bit more updated and clear. But from a personal perspective, I plan to sort of go off of that in some of my decisions. Is just to try to be really obviously fair and to try to hold everybody kind of accountable in the same way. So that's just sort of where I'm at. But I'm looking forward to working with all of you, so. Sure.
And I echo those comments, and I'm here, because of my passion for the community, and because I think we're really at an important point in our town's history with the decision-making that comes with the general plan, and with the lack of consistent application of the rules, as you've talked about, and then also with great hopes that there will be a compliance officer, or whatever that position may be called, so that when decisions are made, that everybody, it's all a fair process.
Right.
Because that's not the case now, and it wasn't prior to COVID, and of course, that's only been amplified by COVID.
Absolutely.
And we all understand that, there's limitations at this time. However, isn't it great? Things are getting better.
Yes.
And now's the time to really kind of start applying that. And also the fact that for all of us up here, I think what's really going to be our biggest challenge is making decisions based upon the guidelines that we currently have and the conflicts that exist within those, and
Right.
how to be fair in applying those.
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, I agree. I was on the old BAR.
Sure.
And it was frustrating because people were, they wanted a decision, and, and too often it was kind of, it was difficult to apply the standards, but it was, it was, enforcement
A lot of
was-
gray area.
was very uneven, and, like colors. We know what it says, but I think there were exceptions allowed in the past and so forth, and it's, I'm a recovering attorney, it's a fundamental due process issue. You have to understand, the person that's being regulated or in the community has to understand which of his actions are in compliance and which aren't. And we saw it a little bit tonight. I mean, we can't, we don't have any color palette, for, simple thing. And you end up during the hearing, sort of trying to work it out or negotiate, and it's awkward. And so I hope we're able to make improvements in that and amend that in a way that could be permanent and so forth. And I think, and communicate those intentions to the city council. I mean, we have some things we want to accomplish other than just handle the cases in front of us, but to strengthen this system, because there's going to be a lot asked of the city in the years ahead as we gain strength. So that's good.
I'd also like to request maybe at the next meeting too, that we could start out with a little bit of information about what, like, when these projects come. I know we get a little report there. Will we expect that staff is going to be helping guide us in some of these decisions? Because it kind of feels like we're the starting point. And if we follow the rules, we're just saying no to some people. Like tonight, there was a great solution to that. So it'd be really helpful for us to even better understand what we can and can't do, and who in the city is supporting us in arriving at those proper decisions.
Yeah, what you have in the city council agenda is a good one with all your advanced actions or advanced calendar. You know, and it was good to know what we could expect next month, but, you know, your calendar goes well beyond the next month, and that would be helpful just to know that something, you know, what might be coming down the pike for us. And I don't want to add to the burden of a already overtaxed staff, but,
Right.
you know, but we'll work together. I'm very encouraged by the members of the group. I was so impressed with our discussions tonight and the attentiveness. It's, I'm flattered to be part of it. So.
Well, thanks for taking charge.
Yes, thank you very much.
Any final words? Brian?
Nope.
Xenia?
Thank you. These were all very helpful comments at the end. I think we're definitely on the right path. We will have some additional staffing coming on board based on council latest direction. So, and yes, some of these things that you're mentioning, we're still new forming committee, and all the feedback that you give, and let us know what you need to help us help you do your work are always welcome. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay,
Adjourned?
meeting adjourned. Thank you.